The movie begins in France with a young woman named Rosalie, who is packing her bags to move into her husband's home. Rosalie had been living with her father, just the two of them, but she always felt lonely and longed to love and be loved like any other girl in the world. Despite her beauty, no one wanted to marry her, which led her father to find her a husband named Abel, and he paid him a lot of money to agree to them. Rosalie and her father head off to her new husband's house because their wedding is only a few days away. Meanwhile, we see a man named Ruby hunting with a group of friends, along with several dogs, that they throw the animals they catch. One animal escapes, crosses the river, and reaches Abel's house. When Abel sees it, he takes out his gun and kills it. At this point, we learn that Abel has lived his life alone, always feeling isolated and wishing to love and be loved. But he never found a woman who would agree to marry him. He was poor. We also learn that Abel has a back injury from an old accident, and he is always depressed. His face is constantly sad, without any hope of achieving anything, and he is also a failure to the point that his only customers are his friends. When Rosalie arrives, she sees Abel killing the animal and becomes frightened, thinking he is aggressive and might harm her too. But he reassures her, explaining that the animal was suffering from the dog's bites and was going to die anyway, so he killed it to end its pain. Abel is captivated by her beauty and cannot understand how such a beautiful woman couldn't find anyone to marry her. Abel brings Rosalie into the house so she can prepare for the wedding. He notices that she is wearing an expensive dress, even though she is marrying a poor man. At this point, we learn that Abel owns a small cafe that he rents from Ruby, who was out hunting earlier. However, Abel hasn't been able to pay the rent on time every month, which is why he agreed to marry Rosalie to receive the money that was offered to him. We also learn that Abel is injured and uses a leather belt wrapped around his back for support, applying a cream made by Ruby himself for treatment, something new for their time. At the end of the day, we see Rosalie praying that Abel accepts marrying her and doesn't leave her like the others before him. Rosalie goes to bed afraid that the marriage might not happen or that something unexpected might occur. The next day, Rosalie talks to Abel and tells him that she hopes to have many children in the future. Abel considers this conversation premature. A few days later, their wedding takes place, and Rosalie is overjoyed because she has finally gotten married. On their way home, Ruby stands watching them with a strange look at Rosalie, but she doesn't notice. When Rosalie arrives home, she finds her father preparing to leave and return to his house. However, she tries to stop him by any means, begging him to stay with her for a few days until she gets used to Abel, as she fears he might abandon her like the others before him, or discover her secret and throw her out of his house, sending her back to her father again. But her father reassures her, telling her she must return to the house now, as her husband is waiting for her. At the end of the day, Abel goes upstairs with his wife to their room, where this is their first night together as a married couple. At this point, Abel discovers the truth and realizes why no one wanted. She has hair on her body like men, which gives her an odd appearance. Anyone who sees her or discovers her secret says she looks like a monster, even Abel. We learn that Rosalie was born with this condition, and her father tried to hide it all his life. But of course he failed, because she would eventually grow up and want to marry like any other girl. This is what happened to Rosalie. She had tried several times to be in a relationship, but each time her suitor would flee when he discovered her secret. She also used large amounts of makeup to conceal the hair on her face, and she would shave her beard like men so no one would see her and bully her. She spent most of her life confined to her home, afraid of facing people and enduring their taunts. The next day, Abel goes to Ruby's factory to give him the money he has. Ruby tells him that this amount is not enough and that he won't wait any longer, but this time he will let it slide because Abel has just gotten married. However, he warns that next time a larger sum will be required. Rosalie's life with her husband turns into an eerie silence, with Abel even refusing to talk to her. He tells her she lied to him and should have told him everything before the wedding. At this point, two of Abel's friends come to visit him. Rosalie greets them warmly and serves them coffee. After they leave, one of them seems interested in her, even though it's impossible she's married. The next day, Rosalie leaves the house and goes to sit alone in a deserted place, where she stays for several days because she feels sad. One day, the townspeople gather at Rosalie's house, attacking both her and her husband. They are about to kill them when Ruby intervenes at the last moment. Afterward, Rosalie isolates herself in the house, refusing to see anyone. During this time, Abel tries to support her, especially since her condition is due to illness and not her fault. One day, Rosalie goes to see a doctor who informs her that it is impossible for her to have children. Rosalie feels heartbroken because she had always wished to be a mother, but now her hopes are dashed. She returns to her room and remains in isolation. A few days later, Abel suggests that they adopt a girl from the town's orphanage. Rosalie agrees, and they go to the orphanage to adopt a little girl named Augusto. The girl agrees to live with Rosalie because she sees Rosalie as a perfectly normal person who only has a hormonal imbalance. The girl is amazed at what she sees, unable to believe that there is a woman who looks like this. At that moment, Rosalie tells the orphanage director that she wants to take the girl home, but the process cannot happen so quickly and requires some time to complete the procedures. Rosalie smiles at the girl, promising that she will visit the orphanage on the day of the upcoming charity event to see the girl sing. She also promises to visit the orphanage frequently until the adoption is approved. A few days later, Rosalie returns to the orphanage to take the girl as the adoption has been approved. However, there is one problem. Ruby does not agree with Rosalie adopting the girl. He calls Rosalie a monster, telling her that she is unfit to raise children in her current state. Rosalie feels deeply saddened because she had hoped to have children, even if through adoption. She returns home in despair and isolates herself in her room for a long time. During this period, she is plagued by nightmares every night, in which she sees her father trying to kill her, wanting to get rid of her, after all his suffering. Because of her illness, Rosalie wakes up terrified every day. A few days later, the charity event arrives and Rosalie goes to watch the little girl sing, as she had promised. There, she confronts Ruby, telling him that he is the reason her life is ruined. She publicly declares to everyone at the event that she had wanted to live among them normally, but they rejected her because of her differences. Even though her condition is a congenital illness, Rosalie leaves the event and walks down the street, but she collapses and loses consciousness. Abel takes her home, allowing her to rest because her hands were bleeding. A nurse comes to check on her. Her father arrives at the house as well. When her father sees her condition, he becomes furious and shaves the hair off her face. He tells Abel that he does not approve of her strange appearance and demands that Abel prevent her from going out looking like that again. At that moment, Rosalie wakes up and is shocked to see that her appearance has changed. She wonders who did this. She goes to the living room and finds her father talking to Abel about her. Rosalie feels sad because even her father cannot accept her as she is. In that moment, Rosalie decides to throw herself into the sea. She runs out into the street, heading toward the nearby sea, and Abel runs after her, trying to stop her from doing so. When Abel reaches her, he finds that she has already decided to jump into the sea because she has lived her entire life as an outcast. Although her appearance was strange, it was due to a hormonal imbalance that she was born with. Rosalie jumps into the sea, surrendering herself to death. We see her sinking without making any effort to save herself. On the contrary, she is completely resigned and allows herself to drown. Because Abel truly loved her, he decides to jump in after her, hoping to save her from death. But when he enters the water, he finds that Rosalie has grabbed him, trying to drown him. Abel initially tries to escape from her, but he fails, and he drowns along with her. The story of Rosalie continues to be told among the people for many years, and the